South Carolina has had its share of lieutenant governors, but none as popular than Andre Bauer. I had a chance to talk exclusively with him for the special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. Mr. Bauer, you know, a lot of South Carolinians haven't seen you in a while. Tell me, how are you?
I'm doing phenomenal.
Yes, yes. And you know, let's talk about something that is very developing right now. As you know, on Tuesday night, the government shut down. And, you know, a lot of people, well, really Congress and the White House couldn't come to agreement on Obamacare. You know, I want to talk to you about something that you said when you ran for Congress, quote, "Times are tough. The world is uncertain. Good, hard-working people are out of jobs. And worst of all, many Americans are losing hope." As we sit here right now, do you believe that America is still losing hope?
I think that statement is more true now than it was then. I think more and more folks have lost hope. We see ourselves continue to get involved in more international affairs that we can't afford. Right. We're spending money we don't have. We're spending our children's future.
Sure.
We're $16 trillion in debt and no plan to find any way to fix this. And so, to me, it's troubling, to say the least, that we don't have leadership in Washington on both sides saying somewhere we've got to address it. We've either got a funding problem, we've got a spending problem. Even if you're not a conservative, even if you're a liberal, we know there is an issue there where we are not bringing in enough to pay our bills. And so, discuss it. Even if I don't agree with you, we've got to engage in the discussion, and we're not doing that.
And you know, of course, you've been out of the spotlight for a while, and as I mentioned, you ran for Congress for a while. I've seen a lot of polls on television. I've seen it in the newspapers and on social media about really the way Congress is operating. As we sit here right now, what is your reaction to Congress? What is your opinion of Congress right now?
I'm very disappointed on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
But again, I think government over the years has taken on way too many responsibilities they shouldn't be even engaged in. Government had a fiduciary responsibility to protect the public, protect our shores, our borders. But we have engaged in so many more things than that. We've become welfare states, things that I think church, faith-based organizations, families, friends, neighborhoods, communities used to take care of. Now we have a government bureaucrat that decides, does this person need help? Does this person not need help? Instead of letting communities make those decisions. You've got government agencies that cost billions of dollars to fund themselves, making decisions that they have no knowledge of whatsoever.
And so let's go back down memory lane. Of course, you ran for the 7th Congressional District. After being a state senator, a House representative, and of course, lieutenant governor, what was so attractive about Washington?
I don't know that Washington was that attractive. I have a different spirit, and I believe that limited government is the best government. And so I really wanted to go up there and be a voice, much like Mark Sanford's been. Actually, you know, the governor, or now Congressman, and I have had our differences, but I will say he has stuck by what he truly believes in, and I admire that in him. And I would have been very similar to not doing whatever the leadership told me, but in fact doing exactly what I thought was best, and not trying to get the better office or the better view of the Capitol or the longevity in Washington, because I didn't care about that. And so I really went up there because I felt that somebody had to have some backbone to stand up to whomever it may be, and I just don't see that anymore.
And so now Mark Sanford is congressman. What do you think of him as Congressman Sanford?
But I like what he did in Washington, and we was there before, and he's the kind of person that needs to be up there right now, quite frankly.
Yeah. And so a lot of people have been in that race. You know, Teddy Turner and Elizabeth Colbert Bush, and even Thomas Ravenel at one point wanted to do it.
Chip Limehouse,
right.
My former Senate colleague John Kuhn.
Yeah,
a lot of good folks in that race.
So what do you think about that particular race and how popular it was?
Well, I think it is wonderful that we still have good, hard-working folks right here in this community that wanted to sacrifice their personal life, their family life, and their business to go up and serve. And so it speaks volumes that we had. It was over a dozen people offer to run just on the Republican side, so that's great. And the Democrats had a few folks too at one time. I know it got whittled down to Miss Bush, but you know, great that she was willing to offer herself as well. So I'm glad that our community, because there are plenty of communities throughout this country where people don't get challenged at all, and that somebody just walks into the seat. And those are a lot of times the people that are most out of touch with reality and aren't challenged and don't have to worry about input from other folks because nobody's challenging their job.
And you touched on this earlier, but let's revisit the Mark Sanford, Andre Bauer era in Columbia. A lot of people thought they knew about your job, but at the end of the day and behind the scenes, who was Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer?
Well, I think the best thing that came out of being lieutenant governor was is they put the office on aging in the lieutenant governor's office. So now Lieutenant Governor McConnell is doing a great job, again, addressing an aging issue. We have a graying of South Carolina and a graying of America. I was raised right here in Charleston the first few years of my life. My dad was stationed here in the Navy. My grandparents raised me. And they instilled values in me. I was actually the first Republican they ever voted for. They had been through the Depression. And so, they saw through things through different set of glasses than I have. But I learned a lot from them. And as we watch our state age and our country age, we're going to have a lot of issues that face us that we are not addressing. And so it was wonderful that the governor and the General Assembly allowed that to happen. It was done on a basis where we tried it for a year. It worked out so well that they made it permanent law. So that, out of everything I did for 14 years in Columbia, that was clearly the best part of the job. And so I appreciate that opportunity to do that. But, I'm a guy that, wasn't the greatest student, but I had an entrepreneurial spirit and a drive, desire, perseverance, and determination, probably second to none. It made up for a lot of shortcomings. And that was how I was able to excel in business and in politics. There were a lot of great candidates I ran against over the years. People don't know I had 16 elections.
That's right.
I had 14 that I was successful to. Maybe those were the most successful that I didn't win. But I had a lot of great, I can't remember exactly, I'd have to go back to add now, but I ran against about 8 or 10 members of the General Assembly over that time period, and so some real qualified candidates. So, I'm flattered the people of South Carolina chose me to serve in that capacity. It was a wonderful experience, and, for the rest of my life, I'll cherish those memories, but it's kind of nice to have my private life again.
Now,
yeah. Not many folks are asking for interviews anymore, so thank you, Quintin.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. This is a blessing. And of course, when you were elected to lieutenant governor, you were actually one of the youngest lieutenant governors in the nation. I'm wondering, let me ask this, how overwhelming was that?
I don't think it was overwhelming at all. I had been engaged in business at a young age. I'd had the experience of serving in the House at 27, the Senate right there just upon turning 30. I think 10 days after I turned 30, I became a state senator. So I'd been there. I had 6 years in the General Assembly. I understood the system.
Yeah.
But more than that, I used what I had learned in life and in dealing with people. I'd been out to Walmart, to their corporate headquarters. I'd already had a business that was selling to 250-something Walmart. So I was familiar with having to deal with people that were in high places that had a lot of power. When a guy can decide your future immediately in business by will he take your product, will he not? Right. After a while, politics is the art of negotiation. You're not always going to get what you want in politics, much like maybe being married. If you want to have a great marriage, you're going to have to learn give and take, and politics is much the same way.
Yeah, and too, from what I'm trying to think about your time as a state senator. Take me back to that time and tell me what those years were like.
That was a different experience because I had grown up in the suburbs. And so this was a rural Senate district. It covered 4 rural counties. Well, at least 3 of the counties were rural.
Yes.
They had big challenges. It was dealing with different demographics. It was a Democrat seat, never been held by a Republican before. And I tell you, the guy I ran against, I thought so much of him. After I won, I went back to his office, knocked on the door, went in there and asked his opinion on several issues because he'd been a state senator for 8 years. His dad had been the Speaker of the House, and his dad had run against Jimmy Burns for governor. And had he run against anybody else other than Jimmy Burns, his dad would have been governor. So he was a class act. He was a very intimidating guy when we were debating, especially when I'm sitting there at 29 against this statesman, and he really was a statesman, Tom Pope. It was a different experience, and the calls and the concerns and the things I had to fight for were much different from when I represented a more well-heeled district.
And let's talk about, everybody has stories. And, I actually was an intern at Channel 5 when I was 12 years old, 96. And I'm trying to figure out, when did the political bug bite you?
I don't know that the bug bit me. I got frustrated with things going on in my community. And at a community meeting, I was being rather vocal, and somebody said, why don't you run for office? And I said, that's a great idea. And so I took what I learned in business, and I used those marketing principles to run against a long-term incumbent, and he was really a super guy, but much like it happens to so many of us, the more you're up there, the more you lose touch. You're up there in committee meetings, and you're fighting for things, and you're voting on bills, and it's quickly or it's easy to lose touch with what's really happening out there. Most of the folks in Washington, if they've been up there a couple of years, they have no clue what the average Johnny Lunch bucket is dealing with anymore. They don't get it, they don't understand it, and it's not all their fault. They have lobbyists knocking on their doors every day, special interest groups knocking on their doors every day, people that want something from them every day, and so they have so many things coming at them that they almost have to build a little bit of a shield or a resistance because they don't know who's coming for the right reasons, or they have to find that out. And their time becomes so finite that they have very little time to even, they have to have other people make a lot of their decisions for them because it's just not enough time in the day.
Yeah. Nikki Haley became the governor, the 116th governor, I believe, on January 11th, 2011. She's been there for 4 years. I'm wondering, what letter grade would you give her?
I really, since I have left being in Columbia, I really hadn't paid a whole lot of attention. I've gotten back into doing things for my community. I'm helping a nonprofit charter school now that has high school dropouts. And we're doing all we can to help those individuals get a degree, and I'm engaging my community, and I'm trying to make a living again. So I hadn't really paid attention to a whole lot. And a lot of times a governor, whether it's good or bad, gets credit or gets criticized based on really what the General Assembly's doing. Much like Obama, a lot of his legacy will be what happened in Congress. And so, you know, I don't know that I have a good enough, I don't have enough information. I haven't been paying attention really enough to tell you and to give a grade. And quite frankly, I wouldn't give you one anyway because I ran against her, and no matter what I said, when you've lost to someone else or beaten someone else, people think it may be sour grapes. And so I don't think I'm the appropriate person to be there giving an overview anyway.
Well, you know it's political time now, and they're running again for governor. So who are you going to support?
You running?
No, I hate politics. Let me ask you this. After being a lieutenant for 8 years, when did you know you wanted to be governor?
You know, I don't know that you ever have a lightning bolt hit you and say you want to be governor. The natural progression is after lieutenant governor, you run for governor.
Sure.
If you run for office, whether it's the smallest level, the biggest level, if you run for just community president of your neighborhood, I think it's that you want to try to make an improvement. Now, some people's improvement is vastly different than mine, but most people that run for some type of office where you are selected by your peers do it because they think my ideas will make a difference. And so when you're at the lieutenant governor level, you know, very few lieutenant governors don't go ahead and run for governor because they like to expand upon, you know, I think we took aging and we put it at the forefront of the agenda. We made it where the General Assembly discussed aging issues, and we improved the lives of seniors, not only by the fact that we were talking about their issues, but we addressed things that actually made a difference in seniors' lives. And so the fact that I got one agency and was able to do that, I thought, you know, it'd be great to be able to have a whole swath of agencies where I can clean house. I can get rid of some of these agencies that should have been shut down a long time ago. I can expand upon things like making sure we have safe roads and bridges in South Carolina. And so there are some things, even as a conservative, I'd spend more money on, but there are a lot of things I'd spend less money on. And so, you know, I would have loved to have had more than anything. I would love to have been able to submit a budget and say, here's where I think the priority should be for South Carolina when we're spending over $5 billion a year.
And, you know, how overwhelming was it to have the endorsement of Mike Huckabee at the time for that, you know, your particular campaign?
It wasn't really overwhelming. He's a class act.
Yes.
We're friends.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of times friends support each other. You know, she had support from other folks. And so a lot of times it's a bigger picture. I think he and our philosophies are much similar.
Sure, of course.
And so I'm flattered more than I am anything that he was willing to support me.
Let's turn to May 31st. It was really a dark day in South Carolina politics. As you know, Robert Ford resigned because of ethics and health issues. You worked with him in the State Health for many years. Where were you when you got the news?
You know, I heard a few days before, but I don't recall exactly where it was. Robert, you know, he fought for a lot of years. Actually, Robert Ford got here about the same time I was being born. He came here
at the hospital
to strike on the hospitals, and we had long discussions about it. And you know, Robert represented his district well for the people he represented. Actually, at one time, Robert Ford represented me. I lived in his district at one time, and I said, "Come visit me." He said, "Oh man, your street's too rough." So I have an appreciation for Robert. One of the easiest things, Quintin, to do is to beat a man when he's down or going through tough times. And I try, I'm not saying I never do it, but I really try, not when somebody's having a difficult time, to be the guy that jumps on. And so I'm not going to do that. Robert worked hard in this state. He gave his time and his talent. And so, Robert Ford, if you get to see this, I appreciate what you did. All of us make mistakes. I haven't looked into it. I don't know exactly what he's accused of, and I don't care to engage in that. It's not my battle. Yeah. But I'm going to speak positive things, and the older I get, the more I want to say positive things about everybody, even if I have certain things that aren't positive, because life's too short.
It is.
And I don't want to be the guy that everything was negative. I mean, clearly I'm very negative on where our country's going right now. Sure. But I want to find some uplifting nuggets that I can talk about.
Yeah. A lot of people know and knew you as Lieutenant Governor Bauer, but beyond politics and government, that is, who is Andre Bauer?
I'm a outdoors guy. I ride my bike through here all the time. Yeah. I like to go kayaking, paddleboarding, you name it. If it's outdoors, I love it. And so I'm kind of a fitness guy. In May 23rd, 2006, I almost lost my life in a plane crash.
Talk to me about that.
I actually went and visited the plane the other day, the remains of it, and so it made me closer in my faith, and it made me, when I was able to walk again, and I don't know if people remember on crutches, I went over that bridge that we can see right there on crutches when it was about 100 degrees out, to show people that I still thought I was fit and ready for the job, because a lot of people said, man, that guy, I don't know after this, the kind of shape he's in. And so it changed me, and so it made me want to be in better shape. So a lot of people say, man, you've lost a lot of weight. Well, I'm in better shape now. I eat a lot healthier. When I was in the General Assembly, I was going to barbecues and eating processed foods, and I don't do that anymore.
Oh, goodness, awesome. I mean, but let's go back to that. How did that day start? And obviously, how did it end?
One of the biggest flaws that I found in public office for me personally was I didn't know how to say no. And so I kept a schedule that was all day, every day. What was supposed to be a part-time job ran me ragged. And I didn't take the travel expenses, and so I bought a little plane, got my pilot's license, and was flying myself everywhere. Took off on a little field there, had just gotten a new engine put in the plane. Engine died, and you just got to take on whatever's in front of you. And I had gone to a wake for somebody, and it was almost my own in the end.
And may I say, you're a walking miracle right now.
I am very blessed. 10 screws in a plate in a heel, a knee cut all the way across, plastic surgery all in my face. I'm very, very blessed. I limped for a year and a half. I had 4 months non-weight bearing on crutches, and so I really appreciate every step I take. I went and saw Kenny Rogers in concert not too long ago, and he said, this is the point in the concert when I used to walk off the stage and then people would clap and I'd come back on. He said, I've gotten so old now and I hurt so much that I'm saving every step. And so I appreciate every step and understand exactly what he's talking about.
And when I was trying to reach out to you, I thought you were in Myrtle Beach, but when I talked to you over the phone, you said you lived here in Charleston. And you was born here, actually. Talk to me about growing up in Charleston.
I have the fondest memories. My grandparents were hard-working folks. They took a lot of time in my life, and they had retired early enough that they could spend time with me. And so whether it was going to the park or going on the job site with my grandfather, he was a cabinet maker. He'd worked at the Navy Yard and then went out on his own. And my memories with him are very, very special. I only lost both of them while I was lieutenant governor. And then my father's mother, she actually moved to Charleston to be closer to the family, and I lost her last year at 93 years young.
I saw the picture on Facebook.
That was my great aunt.
Oh, sorry.
That's my grandmother's sister, who just turned 89. So I'm very fortunate that I've had a lot of special people live a long time in my life.
And speaking of self-made, obviously you've, opened, from what I read, sports merchandising stores, national franchising stores. I'm curious, when did you know you were self-made?
Well, when I was extremely young, I would go and do things like go to the day-old bread store, come back, make sandwiches, and take drinks and sandwiches and sell them to the builders in the neighborhood. Or I would take candy to school and sell it. And ironically enough, I didn't get to go on the State House trip because I got in trouble selling candy. So the day I got elected to the State House, I had never even been in the State House, which is a little irony. So, I was always finding ways to go out and be more independent, and that's what making money allowed me to do. It allowed me to be independent. It allowed me, in this point in time, it allows me more free time. to wake up in the morning and decide, do I want to go do yoga, ride my bicycle, go to the gym, paddleboard, or do I want to go work? I have that luxury because I have spent less than I made, that I can make those decisions. And so some people don't have that luxury because they have a family or other circumstances. And so I have been truly blessed, and so I appreciate each day.
And speaking of school, you went to our Irma High School. Let's talk about Andre Bauer as a high school student. Were you like the smart kid or the sports buff, or?
I was the guy out there always finding a way to make a dollar. I bought a stencil kit and I went through the neighborhoods and I'd paint the number on your curb so people could find your house, or I'd cut your grass, or I'd sell stuff at the Carolina football games. For years, for 20 years, I was out there selling stuff outside of the Carolina football game. That's how I started my business. And so, you know, it was always something. I had a permit down here at the market, and I would sell T-shirts for years in the summertime out by the market. One year, the College of Charleston, I worked moving furniture in to the old building right there where the old Sears building was when they built the dorms there. My job was to move furniture up in there. Hot job. And so, you know, I was always finding something to do in high school, and it you know, allowed me to go to college, and then, you know, allowed me to start buying real estate.
And then it was on to the USC, where I read that you actually were Mr. USC in 1989.
Nobody knows that, but that is true.
I can't even picture
Boy,
that.
it's amazing what politics does to you. She, Manetti.
I mean, talk to me about how that came about.
Each sorority picked a guy, and they have an event, and, you know, they decided who they had judges, and the judges picked me. I don't know.
The rest is history, right? Hey, describe to me the following one word: politics.
It has so many different meanings to so many different people, but really, again, I said it earlier when you asked me, to me, it's the art of compromise.
Right.
It is a compromise to try to make one's community better, and that community could be a borough, it could be a city, it could be a state, or it could be the nation, but it's all designed to try to make life better mutually for everyone. You know, part of the reason we continue to have more and more laws is we have more and more people that do things that harm other people's enjoyment opportunity. And so whether it's a noise ordinance, which you hate to see, but it's because somebody did something that made it so that others couldn't enjoy it. They didn't use good judgment. And so we continue to see more and more laws thrown on the books, which we lose part of our freedom every time there's a new law passed. So the art of that is trying to find a level
Balance?
Balance is a good word.
Yeah. One word to describe the military.
You want me to describe the military?
Yeah, I know you.
Again, I'm concerned that our military is being spread out over a lot of different countries. I feel like the job of our military is to protect our borders. I think we get involved in way too many other conflicts around the world. I think we ought to get out of the UN. There's a lot of things I disagree with, but you know, I'm one person out of several hundred million in this country, and a lot of them may not agree with me, and I worry how much lobbying has an effect on decision making in Washington. And most people aren't going to talk about that, but I truly think that it has some decision making. And when you have planes that sell for over $1 billion, and somebody can sell several of those in one shot, you know, that's concerning to me. And so I really think we need to revamp our whole military strategy. I think Benghazi has been covered up, and I'm disappointed with it. So there's a lot of things in the military. Coming from a military family, most people don't realize my grandfather was an admiral. When the Midway was commissioned, it was the largest ship in the world. My grandfather was the executive officer of the Midway, much like the Yorktown there. I've actually visited it. Purple Heart, Flying Cross, buried at Arlington Cemetery. You know, so I have a fond admiration for our military, and I'm not questioning our military. I'm questioning the folks that decide where they're going to send our military.
Sure.
And I think most of those folks are as loyal as they can be, but I am disheartened to see we continue to look for more places to go get involved militarily when we are weakened as a country right now.
One word to describe Andre Bauer.
Determination.
You know, when I was on your Facebook page again, I was looking through your info page, and I noticed all the countries that you visited. Israel, Japan. As we sit here right now, what is your favorite country and why?
It would be somewhere in Europe. Europe is by far, probably England.
Really?
I love London.
Yes.
I love Paris.
Yeah.
Italy.
Yeah, Rome.
Yeah, and so all those I thoroughly enjoy, and that's why I love Charleston so much. It's my favorite city in the world. It feels like a European city.
Yeah.
And so I ride my bike through all the times, and I just pinch myself every day and go, it's an amazing place. But we are so blessed to be along the coast here in South Carolina. It's second to none.
I think you've really answered everything, but we know that you love traveling and, of course, military and, of course, politics. But what is something else that people don't know about you?
God, I feel like with the news has been pretty good at letting you know everything about me. Maybe stuff I wish you didn't know. I don't know that I want to give you any more nuggets than you already got.
Well, I can't let you go without me asking you about your future. Obviously, you were a state representative, a state senator, a lieutenant governor, a congressional candidate, and now you're a self-made man. But what's the next chapter for you?
Take every day, enjoy it a little bit more, and try to not let things get to you. Clearly, if I turn on the news, which I try not to do anymore, I get frustrated.
Yeah.
And so, I'm taking each day, and I'm spending more time. My mom lives out on Folly Beach, and that's why I'm spending a lot more time in Charleston now to get to cherish that time with her, and my sister who lives in Charleston as well. And so, I'm taking more Andre time,
Yes.
and less time for work anymore. So each day, and if you can throw in a little more love and compassion in there, that's not a bad thing that everybody can use a little more of and give a little more of.
Well, Lieutenant Governor Andre Bauer, it was so great talking to you.
My pleasure. Great to see you, Quintin.
Thank you, sir.